Welcome back to the Puck Bunker. I'm Rocco Zappia, joined as always by my co-host, the man who once ate the kale from the Pizza Hut buffet, Darren Boyce.
I think that's a rumor. I don't know if that was actually true. But how you doing, Rocco?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm all right.
We are going to take a quick break from our draft coverage and get into a little Foreign Nations talk because why not? It's way better than NHL All-Star Weekend, and I think, despite the fact that it's not the perfect international tournament. Like let's be honest about that. But it is still going to be a best on best, and I think the players in the tournament are going to treat it just like it's an Olympic game in that sense. So very excited to see McDavid, Crosby, McKinnon, Makar all on the same team. We'll get into that. But that's what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about that, do a little preview of each team, some predictions, and just a little bit of general hockey talk because this is the Puck Bunker draft and hockey talk. So let's jump right into it. And let's start with Team Canada. This is what they had for lines at practice the last couple of days. So we can look for this to be at least their starting point for the lineup. Line one, Sam Reinhart, Connor McDavid, Mitch Marner. Line two, my favorite line in the history of hockey that I've ever seen in my whole life, is Mark Stone, Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand, Braden Point, Seth Jarvis on line three, Hagel, Sorelli, Bennett on their checking line. Taves and Makar, Morrissey, Parayko, Theodore Doughty make up the defense pairings. Jordan Binnington will get the start and goal. Game number one against Sweden, with Aiden Hill backing him up. Konechny, Stanheim, and Montembeault won't be playing in game one. Boyce, what are your thoughts on this roster? Did they bring the right team?
I think they brought most of the right guys. I think that I really like the forward group. I like a lot of the D core. I mean, Peter Angel's hurt. I mean, that's a big guy to replace. That's I would have liked Drew Doughty better if he hadn't have been out for the last 4 or 5 months. He's been a great defenseman. I just don't know if we've had enough time to see him back healthy yet and put him right into this situation. But again, he's been really good in the past, so we'll see. But really, this team just comes down to goaltending. Out of the 4 teams in the tournament, I think we have, again, there's 3 really good NHL goaltenders here. They're just a level below the other teams in terms of starting caliber goaltenders. There are 2 guys that won cups here though, and again, you're playing with Team Canada. Usually, they're not going to give up a ton of chances. So the whole game for the goaltender here is just not to let in any bad goals. Just make the saves you're supposed to make. So I do think, though, there is going to be a lot of pressure on them because if they do lose a game, that'll likely be the goaltending that kind of gets the blame for it. So I think that might be a storyline we see here. Yeah, I mean, these line combos are great. I love that Stone Crosby McKinnon line. I do wonder if they put McDavid and McKinnon together at some point, though. Really just try to put a wild speed line together, maybe something like that. But you can't really complain with any of these lines at the moment, anyway.
Yeah, I don't. It's tough, and it's like we can nitpick this roster. Maybe there's 1 or 2 guys who maybe could have made it, but didn't. But then you'd be saying someone else should have made it and didn't. Tough for Scheifele to not be there, probably with the season he's having. Tough for Logan Thompson not to be there with the season he's having. But that said, I do also have a hard time. I have a hard time taking issue with 2 goalies who have each won a Stanley Cup. Like they know how to win big games, and that's what you need because Canada's not going to give up a ton of premier chances. And these guys are they're good. Like they're going to be fine. I think. I don't see it as I don't see it as big of a weakness as people want to make it out to be.
No, I mean they're NHL goaltenders that have been quite good in the past or even somewhat recently. The Logan Thompson one, I mean, at the time when they picked the team, I thought he deserved a little bit more, you know, consideration at the time. And he's played really well since then. So I think that's kind of the big one that I think maybe deserves to be on the team.
The
But
guys
I
who
mean,
pick the team know him well, though.
yeah, and they picked it again. I think it more goes they had to pick the team a couple months ago. I mean, it's a little too far out to be picking your best team at the time, I think, especially for goaltenders. Like guys get hot, like you can get on heaters, and guys are in good form. Whereas guys maybe 2 months ago were in better form than they are now. But I mean, I like Sam Montembeault. I mean, he's playing in Montreal. They gave up a boatload of chances a game, so I mean, his numbers are, I think, a little bit more reflective of the team in front of him. Um, and he was kind of getting challenged for playing time a bit, but that's kind of died off now.
He's
I don't
playing
think
quite well earlier in the year, though.
he's playing fine. And I've seen him. I did see him live this year against Vegas, against Aiden Hill, actually. And I mean, they lost, like Montreal lost like 6-5-1 or 5-2 or something like that. I mean, he played fine. Every goal was basically a cross crease pass or something. It wasn't really his fault, which you probably won't see in this format. So, I mean, especially with Binnington, too, St. Louis isn't that great either. So that does influence their numbers.
He's a streaky guy, but
Yeah, he is. He is.
the
He's
upside of that,
inconsistent.
the
He's
upside of that is
inconsistent.
if he starts hot in game one, you could probably ride him.
Yeah, he's the guy that's shown in the past. He gets on a heater, like he's on like a big time heater.
Mhm.
But he's inconsistent. Out of the three guys, I think Aiden Hill is the most consistent guy. Again, I don't think he's having his best year, but again, I've
He's
seen in the
he's
past.
pretty steady.
Yeah, he's steady. Especially with Vegas, he's plays pretty well when the team's good defensively in front of him. Doesn't make many mistakes. So he's who I would have went with starting, but they're going with Binnington. So we'll see what happens.
I can understand it though. What do you think is going to be the storyline here for Team Canada in terms of aside from the one non-goaltending storyline?
Hmm, maybe the coming out party at Cale Makar, like maybe he, a
Does
lot
he
of.
need a coming out party?
Well, I think a lot of the talk on the team is about McDavid, McKinnon, and Crosby, right? And he's kind of gotten pushed back per se. Whereas I think maybe you might come out of this tournament, he's the most important player on the team. I think
Oh,
that
he
might
might
be,
is
yeah, like that might
he
be the
not is he
storyline that
not
comes out of it.
is he not widely considered a top 3 player in the world?
I think he is, but I don't think he's getting enough talk going into the tournament. I think they're talking about their forwards a lot more than their defense.
No, and that's fair, but it's easy to give the attention to the guys who one guy's top 10 all time and the other two guys are the two best forwards in the league.
No, I
Easy,
just yeah.
easy to give the attention there, but yeah, no, I don't disagree. McCarr's probably the most probably the guy that they could afford to lose the least.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll be pretty apparent. It should be apparent at the end of this tournament. He is at least maybe the best defenseman in the world. Obviously, I think that would be even more apparent here. They haven't had a best on best tournament, while he's been in the NHL. So that's where I kind of mean by a coming out party, right? Like he's
Internationally, yeah, that's fair.
internationally going to be Canada's number one defenseman, right?
I think it's going to be something cool to watch. Come, I guess this proves your point. Something cool to watch McDavid, Crosby, and McKinnon on the ice together at the same time. Like, oh God, do not take a penalty against them.
Well, their power play should be good, but maybe there's too much talent on the power play. Sometimes that happens and the power play struggles. So
Not enough puck to go around.
yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah, but
Another one.
I
Oh,
just
go ahead.
I don't think any of these guys would have an issue deferring.
No, but sometimes people defer too much, especially when there's players like this around. So we'll see if there's chemistry there. Because again, this is other sports too. Sometimes the top guys playing together just it takes a while for it to work, and this is a really short tournament.
So let's look at Canada's first opponent here, which is going to be Team Sweden. They are going with Forsberg, Pedersen, Kempe, Raquel, Zibanejad, Nylander on line 2, Bratt, Eriksson, Ek, Lucas, Raymond On line 3, and Arvidsson, Lindholm, and Nyquist. On line 4, Leo Carlsson starts on the press box. Hedman and Brodin, Ekholm and Carlson, Forsling and Dahlin, and Rasmus Anderson is the 7th. They haven't announced their starter yet for their first game. It'll likely be either Allmark or Gustafsson, with Urson being the number 3. Who do you think they should go with in game 1 against Canada?
I'm going to say Gustafsson's had the more consistent year. Allmark's been hurt, but neither of them have played great. Like Allmark came back. I don't think he's played outstanding since he came back for the Sens. And Gustafsson had a really hot start to the year. He's kind of faded off now. I think I would give Gustafsson the start, though. I mean, he's been healthy and played, more of the year. So I think I would give him the start, but you could kind of pick either of them, and I think you'll get a good game out of them.
See, I would go Allmark, because against the most scary forward lineup probably in the tournament, I think the veteran guy who's got the Vezina, he's got a generally pretty calm demeanor to him. I think that might be a bit of a steadying presence, even though Gustafsson's probably had the better year to date and is probably more the long-term guy there for Sweden. I think when in doubt, you give it to the vet.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've seen Allmark when he plays well too. He's really hard to beat when he's playing well, and he plays fairly well when he gets a lot of shots, actually. So, I mean, that could be a possibility here too.
I don't know how much I care for their forward lineup, to be honest.
Oh, it's deep. I mean, I think there's a fair amount of like solid NHL talent here.
It is. I just don't see Pedersen and Zibanejad out battling Canada's top 2 centers, or they're not going to out battle McDavid and Crosby, and they're not going to out battle. Well, maybe they'll out battle Eichel.
Well, maybe that Eriksson Ek line is, maybe line 2. I mean,
I think that's maybe their best line.
Like that line works pretty hard. I mean, that could.
And they have hardworking guys. It's just those 2 centermen, and even to extent, I mean, Lindholm's typically battles pretty hard, but he just having not the best year. Patterson, they can be awfully soft.
I feel like that center, the 4 centers, though, at least it can at least somewhat match up. I mean, it's not going to totally match up. They have 4 guys.
Yeah, certainly. They have the skill for sure. I just don't know.
There's some talent here. There's some guys that can score. There's guys that are pretty responsible. There's guys that are fast here. I mean, I don't. This is a good solid international team, especially up front. Even on defense, again, they've got some high level guys here.
I think their D might be their strong point.
Yeah, they got some really good defensive talent. They got some guys on D that can, run a power play, guys that can play more offensively. They got some guys that can move a bit. They got a shutdown guy. I mean, they're definitely dangerous.
Ekholm makes a great partner for Erik Karlsson, I think.
Yeah, he does. Exactly. But I mean, again, Karlsson might even end up being the 7th D here at some point. Just maybe playing in more offensive situations. It's very possible.
I don't imagine he's coming off their top power play, dude.
No, not in that way. But I mean, if they're playing 5-on-5, he just, again, he might be playing more minutes in offensive, positions, maybe.
Well, not dressing 7. We're only dressing 6.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I don't think he's coming out to be their 7th at any point. But I wouldn't be surprised if Anderson gets in some games here.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at Team Finland. So up front, Teravainen, Barkov, and Laine, Lehkonen, Aho, and Rantanen, Granlund, Hintz, Kakko, Luostarinen, Lindell, Armia, and Erik Haula as the 13th forward. This is where it gets tough for them. Lindell, Mata, Valimaki, Jokiharju, Mikkola, Vakanainen, and Matt and Paolo on defense. Saros, Lankinen, and Luukkonen in nets. Now they had some tough injuries here. They're without Heiskanen, Hakanpää, and Ristolainen on the back end, and I think Heiskanen especially that pretty much killed their chances to really compete in this thing. I think they're clearly the fourth team at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they lost their clear number one defenseman, who would play a lot in this tournament.
Now, if you could give Sweden their centerman, you might have a team that would win.
I do like Finland's centers here.
Their center depth is unbelievable.
I actually like their. I mean, their top three lines are pretty good. I mean, there's a dangerous team here up front. Even their fourth line, again, you have Lundell and Armia and like Haula. Like these are guys that are solid NHL veterans that have.
No, their forwards are great.
Yeah.
Like Barkov and Lundell just won the last Stanley Cup, and Aho and Hintz are point of game players. So
yeah,
they got really good center depth, and I think their wingers are very dangerous. I think it'd have been nice for them if they would have one more high end scoring winger. But I think they're pretty solid all around, and there's not a guy up front for them that can't compete shift to shift with other teams, like with Canada's and USA's forwards. I don't think.
So I'll say this. I mean, I think they have the goaltender. Like I think UC Saros is a high end goaltender.
Yeah.
So I think they have that. I think this is a team though that could have, again, their way that they could potentially win this tournament, and I know they're a little behind the eight ball. Their special teams could be really good, and there's a lot of chemistry with Finnish teams. A lot of these guys have played together before internationally and multiple events.
Yeah,
going back at least even a decade ago, a lot of these guys have. So there might be a little less time to kind of get acclimatized to each other. This is like again, if you're looking at a power play, for instance. There's lots of options they have here. Like they have the big shooter. They have guys that can kind of move the puck around. Like they can do different things and score different ways. They're missing Heiskanen. They're missing the power play quarterback in the back end.
I just think generally though their defense might get them into trouble here. Like most of these guys are third pair D.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the cards have been dealt, though, right?
No, and that's fair. But to your point, Finland does play a very strong team game historically, and at international events they find ways to hang it. Like they're tough. They're tough buggers, and they don't go away, and they battle really hard. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I just feel like if they're going to be able to compete, Saros is going to have to play out of his mind, because I think that defense is going to give up some high end scoring opportunities.
So they may, it's a possibility, but I think with them, this isn't an all-star team for them. Like this is an actual team, whereas Canada is an all-star team. None of these guys have really played together. Even with Sweden, I think Sweden, I guess, kind of has this too, where a lot of these guys kind of end up playing together, especially, world championships and stuff.
Yeah, so most of the European teams know each other pretty well.
So with Finland, I do think, because they play more of a team game, they'll be more inclined to stick to their system. They'll probably play a more defensive style. That's what Finland tends to do.
They'll have
their forwards are going to help out. They won't be, buzzing for offense all the time. They're going to take their opportunities and score that. And so that's why I say it's important that their special teams they have a good special teams. That's how they can win.
They will probably lock down and probably play 4 deep in the defensive zone and look for their chances on the counter attack and on power play. Honestly, you are probably right about that. But that said, I mean, they are still very much not to be taken lightly, because that's why you play. These guys are all in the NHL, and any given game someone could win. And I do think they have an X factor there between the pipes. And I do think that, if you are going to be able to only really match up with the top teams in one area, down the middle is probably where you want to be able to do it. And Finland has as good of center depth as anyone here.
They match up really well against anyone, center depth. Even Canada, again, they can match up. I mean, Barkov matching up with McDavid like that, they're really losing that matchup. I don't think maybe they're not winning it, but they're not losing it.
Barkov won a Stanley Cup as a first-line center. You can match up with anyone, as far as I'm concerned.
Play against McDavid in the Cup final. So, just one thing I want to mention here, Metin Palo. I love how Finland decides that he's good enough to be on their team, but the Ottawa Senators cannot play him over Travis Hamonic. Sorry to gripe about that. Just outrageous to me that he is not playing consistently with them.
As it moves down the
Sorry to
stretch,
go off topic.
as it moves down the stretch, I'm sure he'll be in the lineup.
He needs
every
to
day.
be. So
Well,
maybe if we're talking about a guy that maybe steps up here, maybe this is a guy who has a good tournament. Maybe he gets in the lineup and actually gets some run and plays well. Maybe I'm being a sense bias here, but he's a good player.
He's played well for Ottawa all year. I will say that. Team USA projected forward lines: Kyle Connor, Jack Eichel, and Matthew Tkachuk. Line 1: Jake Gensel, Austin Matthews, and Jack Hughes on the second line. This is a fun line. Boldy, JT Miller, and Brady Tkachuk on line 3. And line 4 has Brock Nelson, Vinny Trocheck, Dylan Larkin, with Chris Kreider skating as a 13th forward right now. Jacob Slavin and Adam Fox as the first pair. Werenski, McAvoy as a second pair. Hannafin and Faber as a third. And Jake Sanderson, who is a late injury replacement for Quinn Hughes, as the number 7. Connor Hellebuck, likely their starter for game 1. Jake Ottinger and Jeremy Swayman as the other 2 goaltenders. Boyce, what are your thoughts on this Team USA?
Well, they're deep. I don't really see any flaws really in this roster. I think as of right now, they have the best goaltender in the league starting for them. They have 2 other guys that are legitimate starters in the league backing him up. So they have the best goalie depth, in my opinion. In terms of
you can only play one guy.
You can only play one guy, but they have the best guy. So
I think anyways.
I think that's okay. In terms of their forwards, I think one thing that kind of stands out to me, they have a lot more greasier forwards now than they kind of have the classic old school Canada team where maybe Canada's turned into old classic US team where they're a little not as hard to play against. This USA team is really hard to play against.
Well,
There's a bunch of guys here that are.
Which of Canada's lines is not hard to play against?
We're talking about the greasier type of guys. So you have Matthew Tkachuk, you have Brady Tkachuk, you have Boldy, you have JT Miller, you have Kreider. Like these guys are brutal guys to play against when they're playing well. Like they hammer guys, like they work really hard. They're they're nuisances.
I don't disagree.
Whereas, again, Canada has some of these guys, but these are some of their top line guys. So it's noteworthy that the U.S. has kind of developed a few more of these guys than they used to have.
No, they certainly have, and I think it's hard not to really not want to play against each other. Like the Tkachuk brothers on the same team is going to be absolute havoc, I think, out there. Oh, that's gonna be fun. But I'm not really like, other than JT Miller, their centermen don't put fear into me.
I think Eichel and Matthews are pretty good.
Yeah, they're the 2. Yep, for sure. They're 2 of the most talented players in the league, but like they're not going to run through you either.
They're not going to run through you, but they're big guys. Like they're
hard to handle.
Yeah, like they're not soft. They aren't physical, I guess is maybe the way to put it. Like they aren't going to go run you through the boards, but they're big lugs to play against. Imagine put Matthews with the two Tkachuk brothers, or even Eichel with the 2 Tkachuk brothers. Like that is like those. You got both Tkachuks going to get the puck, and you have another big center who can score and set guys up. Like,
well, I'm about as big of a Brady fan as there is. And I love the way both of them play. I would take Matthew on my team any day as well. I think that third line could be a bit of an X factor for them, because Matthews and Eichel, and rightfully so, are going to get the majority of the high-end defensive attention from the other teams, and I think that might open things up. Like JT Miller's been hot since that trade. Matthew Boldy just casually scores 40 goals every year, and Brady Tkachuk is one of the top 5 hardest wingers to play against in the entire world.
Yeah, and then the other guys we haven't even mentioned, like Kyle Connor scores 35 goals every year. Like
Kyle Connor is one of the most underrated players in the entire NHL, because he plays.
Yeah, he's a legitimate top line forward in the league. He's barely talked about that way. He's a very good player. Jake Gensel, another like very good player. Like this is a
Gensel gets
good
a ton.
team. Yeah, he gets more credit than Connor does, I think. But like, this is a really good roster. And Chris Kreider, even as your 13th forward, you can kind of put him in anywhere in the lineup. And it's another guy who's really hard to play against.
Well, he's the perfect 13th forward because
Yeah,
he can play literally anywhere. He's the most
move him
one
in
of
and
the
out
most
of the
versatile
lineup.
players in the
Yeah,
league. They
yeah,
are missing now. Fox can step up, and they have some other guys who can run the power play there. Werenski is certainly more than capable, but Quinn Hughes, it's tough to lose. It's tough to lose. Arguably, for sure, your most valuable defenseman.
it is. I think that hurts them, but they're a team that actually has some depth, you know, to at least replace him. I mean, here's the thing about their defense versus Canada. Canada kind of chose, again, they chose an older Drew Doughty, and like Colton Parayko and like those type of guys, which are fine. That's how they're going to play this tournament. I think with the US, they've kind of gone maybe a little bit more thinking of foot speed and maybe a little bit more puck movement here.
Well, they look like
Especially,
that defense to me looks like it's a very transitional defense where
yeah.
Canada can be
So
more of a
they've
shutdown.
they've gone a little bit more of a different philosophy here, which Quinn Hughes obviously would have really helped. But they still, again, I mean, that third pair is still really good. I mean, Noah Hannafin, Brock Faber's good. If people don't actually realize it, like he's very good and
And
he's young.
Sanderson, much like Kreider, could go in there and play on any pairing and either special teams and succeed as well if they want a different look.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I like the divide. Like they have some offensive guys. They have some guys that can shut it down. They have some guys that can play. Um, a couple guys that are maybe a little bit greasier sometimes, and some guys that are, just really move the puck well. I mean, this is a good decor. They can win with that decor, absolutely. They just don't have Cale Makar. That's the difference here.
Nobody has Cale Makar. We have
Yeah,
Cale Makar. There's only
yeah,
one. He's by far the best defenseman in the world. I don't even think it's even close. I don't care if Hughes gets the same amount of points. Makar does more.
yeah. I think that's fair. But I mean, again, the U.S. did lose probably their best defenseman.
Oh,
Um,
certainly.
but they again because they're again Team USA is actually quite deep now in terms of talent they can call up. I mean, they move a guy into the lineup. They call up Sanderson. They can move up guys in the lineup. So it's I mean, again, their third pair is still really good for this tournament.
That's a
Their first
really
pair is still really good for this tournament.
it's a really big forward group.
Yep. Yeah, that is true.
That game's going to be so much fun. Okay, Canada, USA. What do you think? Who are you? Let's go through. Who has the advantages where? Up
I
front.
think I think Team USA is the best team in this tournament.
Do we agree these are the top two teams on paper?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, you think USA is the best team?
I think they're the best team. I think they got the deepest team, and I don't see any flaws in their roster.
Well, what's Canada's flaw?
Their goaltending.
Well, how many Stanley Cups are on Team USA's goaltending? How many?
Okay.
How many?
There's none. I think these guys are better goaltenders as of current in 2025.
Yes, I agree. I would probably like if I had a choice between Hellebuck and Binnington, I'm going to take Hellebuck. That said, is there such a big discrepancy here? Because that is what like I'm reading online, like that is what everyone's saying. Like people saying we're flat out weak in nets. I don't know. I don't know if that's the
Not
case.
weak in net. They're NHL goaltenders. Like NHL goaltenders are good.
That have
But
won Stanley Cups.
yeah, it's just this is going to be again. These are two very high end hockey teams. This is going to come down to probably a 1-goal game, and so literally that's the discrepancy between these teams will be minimal. I
So who do you
think.
think's got the advantage up front?
So Canada has, especially they have McDavid and McKinnon on two different lines. I think, and Crosby. I think their top two lines are definitely better. I do like kind of the depth on Team USA better though. maybe per se.
That is a small. Our third line is
Well, it's kind of the yeah.
highly skilled. It's small though. It's very
With
small.
Team USA again, yes, but again, you got guys like Marchand, like Jarvis, like they're hard workers. I get
No,
it.
they're tough. Yes, dude, it's tough,
Yeah.
but it's a tough small line.
Yeah. I think, again, USA, I think they have a bigger team too. I think up front, but I mean, again, Canada has the best players. They have the best guys.
McDavid, McKinnon, and McCarr, and whatever order, depending on the day. Those are the three best players in the world.
And if they really wanted to do it, honestly, you could even move Crosby down to line 3 and kind of spread out the wealth of your forward talent. That he could have all three lines are basically like you have a stud on each line.
Yeah,
if they really wanted to do that.
Now, whose decor do you like better? I would take Canada's forwards because, I mean, if you really get down to it, could you rely on those top two lines could each play 22 minutes a night?
Well, I think again, yes, I think you could also move Crosby and point around, and you put Crosby with Marchand, and then you have three lines that I don't think the U.S. can really match up with. I think I think Canada does have the better forward group here. I do like the U.S. though in terms of maybe their fourth line and just general size, but I think Canada has more talent.
I think so too, but I do think equally, even though Canada may have the more talented team, the U.S. is built at least to match up well against them because they have a pretty decent advantage in size.
Well, I think Team USA's greasier players are bigger. Like they're bigger and kind of harder, except for maybe Sam Bennett. But other than that, like again, Marchand's kind of small. Like Jarvis is a bit small. Like Konechny's not. Yeah, Konechny's not huge, but I mean, again, like these are the guys that work really hard. Whereas you have like Brady and Matthew Tkachuk, who are massive guys.
JT Miller,
yeah, like that's and so.
Okay, so check mark to Canada on the forwards, check mark to USA in nets. And what do you think on the decor?
Well, here's the thing. Canada has the best guy. I think after Makar, though, I think the U.S. has a better decor than them. And it's strictly because I'm not sure if Doughty is fully healthy. Like, I know he's back, but we just haven't seen him. Like, it's just I have question marks if he's actually ready to play at this level.
See, I think USA might have the more mobile defense.
They move the puck better.
They might have the better puck movers, but I think Canada has the best puck mover, and I think they're probably a little bit stronger defensively.
They're definitely stronger defensively. But again, we already said this. I think Canada's fairly, especially their first two lines are fairly fast, right? Especially if you're putting McDavid on one line and McKinnon on another. Maybe not Crosby and Stone per se, but I mean,
I would say McDavid and McKinnon are fairly fast.
Yeah, well, they're fairly fast. So I think maybe that's their thought process there is they kind of have to combat them with guys who can skate themselves. That might be more of the thought process with them.
It's funny a little bit. You have the Americans who have an extremely quick and mobile decor, moving the puck up to some bigger, more rough and tumble forwards. And on Canada, you almost have the reverse, where some bigger, rough and tumble defensemen who are going to be tasked with moving the puck up to some high-flying, dangerous forward combinations.
Yeah. So that'll be the key matchups, is how the defense deals with each other's forwards, really, because they kind of have two opposing philosophies, or at least kind of way their teams have been built. But I really like the U.S. decor in terms of like Brock Faber's on their third pair. Like Brock Faber's really good. I mean, Zach Werenski's good. Like Charlie McAvoy's good. Like I like all these guys.
Yeah.
And again, I wouldn't, I wouldn't say they're, rough and tumble, but I don't think they're soft. And I don't think Canada is really going to be a team that's going to be out there just absolutely going to crunch them all the time. So
and that's perfectly fair. So let's go through game one. Game one predictions. You have USA versus Finland. What do you think is going to happen for that?
I think
That
the U.S. will win that game. Be like
you got the US
5-2. Yeah,
5-2,
5-2.
5-2 for the Americans. Okay, that's fair enough. I'll say it's going to be 6-3.
Wow, high scoring.
6-3, a high scoring affair for that. Canada versus Sweden. I am going to go with a. I'm going to go with a 6-2 for Canada over Sweden. I think Sweden's going to get in a take one too many penalties, and Canada's probably going to go about 4 for 5 on the power play.
Oh boy, 4 for 5.
4 for 5 on the power play. Yeah,
I'm gonna go against the grain here. Sweden's gonna win that game 4-3.
Darren,
Yeah.
Sweden to win game
What's
one.
the classic way that Canada works their way into these tournaments? They usually struggle early. That's usually how they've always been.
Yeah, but they've never had McKinnon and Crosby and McDavid and McCarr on the same team before.
I mean, they've had Mario Lemieux on their team before. Like they've had these types of guys.
Yeah, well, I've never seen Mario Lemieux struggle, so
No.
that doesn't even count. Tournament predictions. What do you think? I'm taking Team Canada all the way.
Well, here's the thing. I think Team Canada might struggle early in the tournament, but in terms of one game, I think that they might come back. Then they would come back in their second game, probably go with Aiden Hill, win that game, and then kind of maybe that's how they kind of roll from there. But again, they've been together for 2 days. A lot of these guys haven't played with each other. I'm just not expecting them to go out there and thoroughly dominate their first game.
No,
Whereas again, I do think some of these other teams, in the U.S., some of these guys have played together a bit more than the Canadian guys have. It's just it's a little different dynamic usually.
yeah, although like I would say like Taves and McCarr know each other very well. Crosby and McKinnon and Marchand all know each other very, very well. Bennett and Reinhart play together. Hagel and Point play together. There's a lot of familiarity here, even though they don't have that same international experience coming up as maybe the European teams for sure, and even the US guys played on that ND national team program together as well.
Yeah. So I think I guess what I'm thinking is I think they might lose the first game, but then they come back and play the U.S. and actually that would be that would make that Saturday U.S. Canada game a very big game, and they would come out and win that game, and that's so you kind of get the momentum for the tournament that way.
Well, that's a huge game. No matter what happens in the first couple games, that's a big one.
But that would make that game even more important, and I think that's when you kind of see them. They've grinded down, right? They're at home that night too.
Was that
it's Saturday night in Montreal, right? Saturday night in Montreal is a different animal.
Yes, that certainly is the case. So who do you think's in the finals?
I'm gonna go out on the limb.
Canada's going to lose the first game against Sweden.
I think it might be Canada and Sweden, to be honest.
Really? Did you not open the episode saying that the U.S. was the best team in the tournament?
I think they're the best team on paper, but I mean, it's a crapshoot. I'm going with my sports gut here.
You're going with your sports gut. Okay, so Darren's sports gut says that the USA is the most talented team, but that they don't make the finals. Okay, now there is a hot take once we put it in those kind of terms. That is something. I'm going to say that the two best teams on paper make it to the finals, Canada versus USA, and I'm going to say that Canada comes out on top.
Fair enough.
Historic Four Nations tournament.
They're winning the plaque.
No, there's a trophy. Did you see it?
It's nice. See the trophy, actually.
Yeah, there's a trophy. We had a little bit of a running joke about the trophy or plaque. Anyways, doesn't matter. Nice trophy that they're going to be playing for, but at the end of the day, I think this tournament is just going to be. We got to appreciate it for what it is. Okay, this is not the Olympics. This is not even the World Cup of Hockey. It's not the Canada Cup. It's a brand new thing. There's only 4 teams in it. Ideally, you like to see the Czechs and the Russians. If you really want to call it a true best on best, I think you need at least those 6 countries if you're going to anoint one of these teams the best international team in a true best on best tournament. Unfortunately, they don't have that option at the moment, so we can appreciate this for what it is. And I think that despite maybe a little bit less hype than a true best on best tournament, once the puck drops and these guys get going and they put their country's jersey on, these guys are competitors, man. It's going to be intense. It's going to be phenomenal hockey. And when you're watching the game, you're not going to be able to tell whether it's the Olympics or the World Cup or the Four Nations. Saturday night's going to be Canada, USA, and God, I hope the old school guy in me who grew up in the 90s would really love this to turn into some kind of World Cup of hockey. 1996, absolute brawl on ice. But even if that's not the case, it's going to be hard hitting. It's going to be hard working. Every goal is going to be huge. And I think that Bell Center crowd is just going to be one of the most electric places in sports in 2025.
Well, it's yeah, it will be, and it's better than the All-Star game. Very happy about that. B, hopefully this leads into an Olympic year next year where these guys are in the tournament. A lot of these guys will be playing in that tournament. It kind of creates some rivalries for that tournament. It probably makes that tournament even better. If these guys, are all engaged in this kind of little tournament here, I think that improves the quality of that, those games there. And again, I hope this kind of leads to a World Cup of hockey itself. The NHL really misses out on that, whether they believe it or not. I think them not actively trying to promote the game this way has been a flaw of the NHL. I think it's kind of hindered them. So it would be good if they could kind of get back to getting a Canada Cup or a World Cup going, and bringing all those best teams over. I get that they're, you're still missing out on Russia, so it's not totally a best on best tournament, but that's the direction I'd like them to go.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think that these type of events are something that the fan base really craves, and I mean, you don't want to see it every year. It needs to mean something. It needs to be special, but if you get the Olympics every 4 years and maybe the way they do it in soccer, where it's every second year, you have the World Cup or the Euro. But it needs to be something on a regular basis. And I understand the business side of it, the insurance, the liability, the owners, the injuries. But at the end of the day, it's a fan driven product. And like you said, like this kind of tournament, like that's going to lead into the Olympics. And regardless of who ends up winning this, there's going to be a storyline of the revenge game in the Olympics, and whoever loses is going to say, yeah, well, we'll get him at the Olympics, sort of thing. And anything in that sense is only good for the game. It's only good for the fans, and I think that ultimately that the owners and the PA and anyone who's involved with logistics needs to get their head out of their arse here and make this a regular, reoccurring, prominent, not necessarily the Four Nations, but some sort of true best on best needs to be a regular occurrence in our sport.
Yep. I think it's a missed opportunity. I mean, I always go back to this, but think of, again, you want to grow the game. You want to grow markets where people are going to watch this game. I mean, think of the Miracle on Ice, right? Like what that led to. I mean, it's those types of events. And again, I know it wasn't a best on best, but I mean, just look at, again,
Still the Olympics.
It's still the Olympics. Those international events change the dynamics of sports. I mean, I'll even go back to even think of, again, like 96 or sorry, 87, Canada Cups and that. I mean, sure. It's just, as a fan, it's the best. This is what you want to see. This is the best hockey you're going to see. But it would be good too to get teams like Switzerland and Germany into these tournaments, because the only way they're going to improve the product of hockey is get them in these tournaments too. So I am think you have the bigger picture here that should be a bigger tournament, getting these guys opportunities, because those leagues are far better now too, and those teams are a lot better now too. They have lots of drafted players. They might not win at this level, but they can at least compete at it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. We're absolutely on the same page. The more hockey, the better. At the end of the day, as far as we're concerned, boys, I think that's a great place to wrap this up. And hopefully we'll be back after the first set of games with a little reaction to the first game and some second match previews, much like we did during the World Juniors. Hopefully we'll get a few episodes in here during this brief but exciting tournament that they call the Four Nations Cup. Darren?
I won't be as upset about the player selection this time. That's all.
No, there's a lot less to gripe about. Hey, Team Canada decided it's time to name a permanent GM for the World Juniors. What a novel concept.
Wow.
They must have been watching us, Darren.
They watched the pod. All right.
They must be watching. I don't see how they wouldn't be watching. Okay, that's good for us today. We'll be back soon. This episode was supposed to come out after our top 50 ranking. It may come out before or sometime in between. Anyways, tune into that as well. So that's a lot of fun. It either just got released or will be released very shortly. We'll talk to you guys soon and see you after the first set of Four Nations games.
See you guys later.